Okay, the president just tweeted about the Tarmac meeting between former President Bill Clinton and then Director of the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch. So you may recall in 2016, June, they had a happen chance meeting on a tarmac in Arizona. The then Director of Justice, Loretta Lynch, boarded former President Bill Clinton's aircraft so that they could discuss, in the words of Hillary Clinton, golf, grandchildren, and presumably the weather. So Hillary, and this is according to Legal Insurrection, this is a quote from the day after her July 3rd FBI interview. Well, I learned about it in the news, and it was a short, chance meeting at an airport tarmac. Both of their planes, as I understand it, were landing on the same tarmac at about the same time. And the Attorney General's husband was there. They said hello. They talked about grandkids, which is very much on our mind these days, golf, their mutual friend, former Attorney General Janet Reno. It was purely social. They did not veer off of speaking about those kinds of very common exchanges. So this strikes me as strange. Hillary Clinton is the Democratic nominee for president. She is also under investigation by the FBI at this time. Loretta Lynch is the director of the Department of Justice, overseeing James Comey and Andrew McCabe, the two central characters in the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. It strikes me as strange, implausible even, that this FBI investigation wouldn't be a topic of conversation between the two of them. So I'm inclined to believe that they discussed something else. And I'm going to give you my belief, this is only speculation, based on the events that unfolded following this meeting, what I believe happened aboard that aircraft. So let's go back to February of 2016, the same year. Antonin Scalia was found dead Saturday, February 11th, at a ranch in Texas. At 79, this is from CBS, Scalia was one of the staunchest conservative members of the court. He was nominated in 1986 by President Ronald Reagan as the longest-serving member of the court. He championed the philosophy of originalism, meaning he interprets the Constitution according to what he believes the original authors intended over 200 years ago. So I'll expound on that a little bit. Let's take the example of the Second Amendment, which has been in conversation as of late. So an originalist interpretation of the Second Amendment would be framed in the context of the time. So we had just fought a war to declare our independence, and armed citizens, the ability of people to keep and bear arms as written in the Constitution, is a bulwark against a potentially tyrannical government. When we give the government this ring of power, we're abdicating some responsibility, and we're also limiting our ability to defend ourselves against said government. So the right to bear arms was necessary for a free state as codified in the Constitution. We have guns because they have guns. It's as simple as that. And the reason we have to have the right to keep and bear arms is because what had happened in the past, the censoring of speech, taxation without representation, quartering of soldiers, all of the abuses of the king were outlined. Those were the motivations for encoding into the Bill of Rights our right to bear arms. So that's an originalist interpretation. Now, many people, our former President Barack Obama included, would say that the Constitution is a living document and it needs to be reframed in the current year, to quote Justin Trudeau. So what arms are included, what are not included, what is the purpose of the Second Amendment, it all becomes subjective to the time if you believe that the Constitution is a living document, as some do. I apologize, this is only the second time I've used this microphone. So Scalia was a conservative, and his death vacated a Supreme Court seat. he was the longest running member of the court as well. And so the incoming president has a vested interest, let's say, in appointing someone whose political leanings match their own. If I'm Hillary Clinton, it's very likely that I'm going to appoint a more liberal, a more hawkish Supreme Court justice to the court. And vice versa, if I'm Donald Trump, it's going to behoove me to appoint a more conservative, a more libertarian member to the court. So, what I believe happened aboard that aircraft was that Bill Clinton asked of Loretta Lynch to lean on the FBI, to use the Department of Justice to influence the outcome of the investigation. And if not influence the outcome of the investigation, to influence the way in which the results of the investigation were broadcast to the public. I'm speaking specifically about the wording that James Comey used when he issued his statements about concluding, prior to reopening, concluding the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. So the decision, and in his words, this came about from pressure from the Department of Justice. The decision to use the word matter as opposed to the word investigation. Why is that important? Leading up to the presidential election, there are an infinite number of things that can influence public perception. Public perception heavily influences the outcome of the election. So, as most people say, if they're being truly honest about our election system, it's a popularity contest. People are mostly, generally, uninterested in issues because they don't know anything about them. If I start talking about foreign policy, I'm going to lose you real quick if I haven't already lost you talking about this shit. So people are uninterested. They want to know, what kind of person is this that I'm going to vote for? They don't care what you think, so long as you don't want to put them in prison, let's say. Leave me alone, do what you want. I think that's the general viewpoint. So the perception of impropriety, the idea that the Democratic nominee is under investigation by the FBI for committing a crime, for having secret, classified, compartmentalized, and special access program information on a private email server as opposed to our house.gov email server. That's a problem. It's illegal. So when you start to connect the Awan brothers from Pakistan, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Huma Abedin, Anthony Weiner, these people are all connected and all have traffic, along with John Podesta, all have traffic through this clintonemail.com server, communicating, transmitting, and receiving classified information. 110 emails in 52 email chains. You've seen the meme. So just the decision to use the word matter instead of investigation, something that minuscule, can influence the outcome of the election. I don't know if that was it. I don't know if the investigation is what sealed the deal for Donald Trump. I can't say. But it's my belief that the Supreme Court justice seats of Antonin Scalia that had already been vacated, and the one that was soon to be vacated by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's 1,000 years old, once the age of consent lowered to 12 years old. This person is out of touch and out of time. I'm Bill. I'm going to offer you this Supreme Court justice seat. I believe this is a lifetime appointment until you recuse yourself. And perhaps you could lean on James Comey and Andrew McCabe to influence the way in which this information is disseminated to the public. So, again, this is from Legal Insurrection. Sorry about the mic. When Comey testified after his firing that Lynch told him not to use the term investigation when referring to the investigation of Hillary, that Tarmac meeting once again became the context of possible collusion by Lynch to help Hillary Clinton's campaign. Additionally, in 2015, this is from judicialwatch.org, donation sponsored, by the way, In 2015, a political action committee run by McAuliffe, Terry McAuliffe, a close friend and political supporter of Bill and Hillary Clinton, donated nearly $500,000 to Jill McCabe, the wife of Andrew McCabe, deputy director of the FBI, who was then running for the Virginia State Senate. Also, the Virginia Democratic Party, over which McAuliffe had significant influence, donated an additional $207,788 to the Jill McCabe campaign. In July 2015, Andrew McCabe was in charge of the FBI's Washington, D.C. field office, which provided personnel resources to the Clinton email probe. So you can see how these things tie together. I could just be making connections where there are none, but I think it's unlikely that that meeting happened by chance. I think it's equally unlikely, which is another issue we could explore, how a reporter happened to be there with a clear shot to the side entrance of Bill Clinton's private plane. Who knows? Was someone tipped off? And if someone was tipped off, this was not a happenstance meeting. So hopefully I've clarified for you what is going on with the Tarmac issue, why the president is tweeting about it, and what context it has in its time. So the originalist interpretation, what was happening at the time, what were the motivations of the individuals involved. And I think that paints a picture of collusion between the DOJ, FBI, and the Clinton campaign to try and get her elected. And I think what's going to happen over the coming weeks is a further focus into that investigation and whether the results were skewed by political influence. Thanks for listening. You can follow me on Instagram, bestronglove at instagram.com. I do live streams pretty regularly. You can also find me here. Obviously, if you're liking this video, like it, subscribe, and leave comments if you have questions, concerns. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how I can make these videos better. Thanks.